Hi, welcome to Average Man's Spiritual Quest, where average people like you and me think about myriad spiritual questions and issues like jurors in a jury trial, doing our best to be objective and open-minded. I'm your host, Benedict. Of course, this channel is not about politics, but today we need to visit a trend sweeping across a large swath of the American Christian communities. Something that is deeply concerning, indeed frightening, because it makes one question the very workings of faith in the minds of people. I'm talking about the emergence of the White Christian Nationalism. My family came to America when I was 15. We imagined America to be like the scenes that we saw in the movie Sound of Music. Los Angeles was rather different, but surely America was a country flowing with milk and honey, a promised land like the Canaan in the Bible, a land of opportunity. I studied at a boarding school and then went to a liberal arts college, mostly on generous scholarships. Not that I was all that smart. They decided if they're going to let me in, they're going to make it possible for me to attend it. That was America. Then I became a lawyer after that. America proved to be all I had imagined it to be. It was benevolent, generous, and above all, let us be, so long as we obeyed laws and tried hard. I know, my experience was more on the fortunate side. Other immigrants suffered more, experienced racism here and there, but overall, America was an infinitely large country that embraced those who wanted to be a responsible part of it. Eventually, though, I had to decide whether to apply for the U.S. citizenship or not. There, I fell into a dilemma. Because I was already 15 when I first came here, my sensibilities had already developed. I questioned whether I had the visceral, guttural, primordial love for America, which would allow me to give the Pledge of Allegiance to America. Culturally, I wondered whether I was American enough. I was into Bach and Mozart, not Rolling Stones. I was into Baroque art, not Andy Warhol. I was not into fast cars, but was studying voice, deluding myself that I could become an opera singer at my eminent height of 5'4". I was more attracted to Asian girls than white girls. To be frank with you, I loved Korean food equally as much as I loved pot roast. I agonized for many years. Then one day, a thought flashed in my mind. If not visceral pre-existing love for America, I could and would gladly give my Pledge of Allegiance to the idea that is America. What America stood for, the American values emblazoned in the Constitution. Yeah, as a nation-state, America could do this and make that mistake, but at its heart, America was fundamentally good. Goodness that was unmistakable, ineffaceable undercurrent of this great nation. I decided I could gladly pledge my allegiance to America and become its loyal citizen. It was a magnificent, almost sacred covenant between the little old me and the idea that was America, the shining city on the hill that promised all the values we Americans hold dear at heart, like freedom, equality, justice, and inclusion. Thus, I became a citizen of the United States in the 1980s. Then came the presidential election of 2016, and Donald Trump was elected president. Then came the January 6th insurrection at Congress in 2021. It was not just another political demonstration gone wild, it was serious. The attack left 5 people dead, nearly 140 law enforcement officers seriously injured. As the event unfolded, I was transfixed. I was shaken to the core of my being. I saw people carry a life-sized cross and pray with their foreheads pressed on it, apparently lost in deep devotion. A chill ran down my spine. I kept asking myself, just what are they praying for? Since then, I have also seen pictures of insurrectionists wearing baseball caps that said God, Guns, Trump. And In God We Trust written on a gallows, apparently meant for Vice President Pence, maybe. A year and a half later, we of course have learned what they were praying for. Instead of me explaining it, let me direct your attention to a July 25th CNN article entitled "An Imposter Christianity is Threatening American Democracy." I provided a link below. I know, CNN is a liberal-leaning news organization, and some of us may have a problem with that. We're all subject to confirmation biases and silo mentality and those things. But the article does identify what form of Christianity we are witnessing, based on books and articles and interviews with scholars and experts. It says, the insurrection marked the first time many Americans realized the United States is facing a burgeoning white Christian nationalist movement. This movement uses Christian language to cloak sexism and hostility to black people and non-white immigrants in its quest to create a white Christian America. The article also identified 3 key beliefs often tied to white Christian nationalism. Their first belief is that the United States was founded as a Christian nation. Erasing the line separating piety from politics is a key characteristic of white Christian nationalism. We're talking about theocracy, my friends. That's not what I understood when I gave my Pledge of Allegiance. I thought America guaranteed freedom of religion instead. Of course, the claim that America was founded as a Christian nation is just historically false. As the article points out, the Constitution says nothing about Christianity. Based on my understanding of the world history, America was basically a grand experiment carried out on a colossal blank sheet of paper, the North American continent. All the political philosophies developed in the 18th century, the European Age of Enlightenment, at the center of which lies the concept of separation of church and state. We all learned about that in high school. The second belief is a belief in a warrior Christ. A warrior Christ. There's a verse in the Old Testament that snared my heart long ago, making Yeshua, Jesus, my window into the cosmic spirit, God, if you will. It goes something like this. For unto us a child is born, unto us a son is given, the government shall be on his shoulders, and his name shall be called Wonderful Counselor, Mighty God, Everlasting Father, and Prince of Peace. Isaiah 9:6. Prince of Peace. Isaiah was prophesying the coming of the Messiah, and this Prince of Peace taught humanity to do what? To love one another and to turn the other cheek. But this is not the Jesus they believe in. Rather, they believe in the warrior God depicted in the book of Revelations. The warrior with eyes like flames of fire and a robe dipped in blood, who leads the armies of heaven in a final triumphant apocalyptic battle against the forces of the Antichrist. The third key belief is that there is such a thing as real American. The real America, a term coined by 2008 vice presidential candidate Sarah Palin, has been co-opted by the white Christian nationalism. Real Americans don't include other citizens who don't deserve the same rights. By extension, the real Americans don't want Americans of color in this country, I guess. They would dearly wish, if they could, to turn back the clock and not let anyone of color onto this beauteous land God bestowed on just the white Christians. These are indeed sobering thoughts. But apart from the obvious bastardization of our political ideals and systems, and the nefarious infringement on our individual rights, these thoughts represent a mutation of Christianity, an appalling one at that, happening in the 21st century America. You know, there's this one line of dialogue I remember from the 2005 movie Kingdom of Heaven. I'm sure many of you saw it. Orlando Bloom was Balian, Liam Neeson was Godfrey, and Eva Green was Sibylla. The story unfolds during the Second Crusade, where the Crusaders are defending Jerusalem against the Arab coalition led by widely feared and respected Saladin English. Yeah, it's a Hollywood blockbuster movie with panoramic medieval battle scenes and an unlikely love interest, but screenplay, the dialogue, is impressive. At one point, describing the difference between Islam and Christianity, it says this: Muhammad said obey. Jesus said love one another. You may agree or disagree with this one line, but you gotta admit this aphorism encapsulated the difference between Christianity and Islam in mere 8 words. As literature, it is just beautiful. And this teaching of Jesus, love God and love one another, is by itself what makes Jesus worthy of our veneration. Certainly mine, and for many of us, makes Jesus God. Well, this much should be pretty self-evident to anybody who has ever heard of Christianity. Well, so I thought, but apparently not. The truly frightening thing as we observe the white Christian nationalism is this: faith can be mutated into an alien form in the minds of people who are not a whole lot different from the rest of the Americans. And they devoutly believe they are in the right. And God, Jesus Christ, sanctions it, indeed mandates it. This is what I said was frightening at the beginning of this video. This is not a political channel, so let's remain focused on the spiritual aspect of the white Christian nationalism. The central question I'm raising today is therefore this: can faith, a mental process, be trusted? I'm not talking about faith in this or faith in that, the subject matter of faith, but faith, the mental phenomenon itself. Maybe the whole thing is a passing thing due to the changing demographics in America. The majority of Americans under 18 are now people of color, they say. Or is it? Is it sowing the seed of rancorous division among Americans for generations to come? Will some states begin to secede from the Union? Will American Christianity rediscover its benevolent self? If faith, a mental phenomenon, can mutate like this, can be this injurious to what we thought were self-evident values of the shining city on a hill, what do we average people on spiritual quest do? Must we be suspicious every time we feel a certain sensation of faith developing in our minds? These are deeply disturbing questions, and I don't know the answer to it. Let me just leave today with something that happened in world history. In the 14th century, the 1300s, humanity experienced the depth of suffering and misery. There was the worldwide Black Plague that we all know about. There was the 100-year war in Europe between what is now England and France. There was the Little Ice Age that began in mid-13th century, catastrophically reducing the food production all over the world, resulting in famine of biblical proportions all over the world for years at a time. There were cannibalism and infanticides everywhere. The resource-poor Arab world suffered particularly so. This was also the century of Tamerlane, perhaps the most blood-curdling steppe nomad conquerors, known as the Sword of Islam, killing estimated 5% of the world's population. Out of this collective suffering and misery, European Islam began to diverge in the 1300s. Europe chose the future. Liberal humanism, which emphasized human agency, critical thinking, and affirmed human freedom and rights, in other words, secularism, leading to Renaissance, which in turn led to the Age of Discovery, Age of Enlightenment, and a century later, Industrial Revolution, and the rest we all know. Meanwhile, once glorious Islam, the beacon of civilization at the time of medieval Europe, chose the past in the form of Sharia law, an ultimate expression of Islamic fundamentalism, whereby ancient practices, Quran, Hadith, what Muhammad liked and didn't like, became law, touching upon every aspect of human life from daily personal hygiene, for instance, which had to use to do what, to prayers, to politics and warfare, whereby any progress in modernity, even art and music, would be banned, whereby secular form of governance, human rights, freedom of thought, let alone women's rights, withered away, whereby no more distinction among state, religion, individual would exist. Rather like, if you think about it, rather like the mindset, indeed faith, of the white Christian nationalists. Historians refer to Islam's adoption of Sharia in the 14th century, the great closing of the gates. The great historian of civilization, Fernand Braudel of France, from mid-20th century, called it an unmitigated disaster for Islam. Are we Americans embarking on a similar disaster, snuffing out the beautiful white light of the shining city on a hill by letting faith mutate into a virulent form through lack of careful introspection? Thank you. I'll see you next time.